10 years of Nelson Mandela Day was celebrated in style with an all-day event hosted by the City of Ekurhuleni and the Nelson Mandela Foundation on the 18th of July 2019. While the choir warmed up the cold early morning, volunteers filled packs for distribution. The objective was to take action against poverty and inequality, to inspire change and to make every day a Mandela Day.
The work that we'll be doing today will be focused mainly on shelter, the one area which is out of 5 other areas on shelter. And we are really grateful and honored to have a partner such as Habitat for Humanity, who have been critical in making sure that we deal with shelter in a much more systematic way. You can't just relax when people continue to 25 years on tell you that they've been living not only in a shack, sometimes under plastics. And a granny a couple of months ago came to the foundation to explain how the foundation's initiative helped change her life, and we are hoping that we'll continue to do so as a people.
Nelson Mandela was a global statesman. He did a lot to push back the frontiers of poverty, and he called on all others across sectors, corporate sector, government sector, civil society. We find ourselves as Habitat for Humanity in the middle of that of delivering on that call, because our key focus is what we call a P4 approach, which is people, private, public partnerships. So basically, the mission of Habitat is to bring people together, to build homes, communities and hope. So we're positioned at the place where we can actually do what Nelson Mandela is doing. And so this week and this month is the Nelson Mandela month. And so our contribution is that we have organized from Monday up until Friday a big build event where corporate companies have come and government sectors have come into a place called Palm Ridge. And so there, people are literally contributing by building structures for people who do not have, the low-income communities.
Well, it's these houses that we will be unveiling today. We've got about 4,000 stands there. We've built already about 2,000. We'll be handing over about 600 today. We will be building more. So our contribution, it's a substantial one, and that will make a huge difference in the lives of our people, which is what Madiba lived for, which is what he's all about, changing the lives of our people. So we think that's an appropriate way to honor Madiba's legacy. Housing is a big issue, especially in Gauteng. I think half of the national backlog on housing is here in Gauteng. And we've got a lot of people, about 230,000 every year coming to Gauteng. And when they come here, they look for different opportunities, including housing opportunities, looking for work, looking for access to education institutions, health and all that. So we know that the task we're facing is huge and is a daunting one, but we are confident that working with our people, including the private sector, we should be able to make a huge mark.
We are currently building about 100,000 houses as we speak, for 59,000 service stands for people who can afford to build homes for themselves. We are also currently electrifying the informal settlement. We have over 600,000 people in the city who resides in about 119 informal settlements. We are currently electrifying those informal settlements so that we can ensure that there is decent electricity and livelihood for those families. We have had a huge discussion, especially in the media, with regard to issues of sanitation. And the point that we're making then is that seated here, we probably have an average of 3 to 5 toilets in our own houses. Now, when we want to provide 1 toilet for 5 families, it becomes a scandal. Sure. Because we were giving dignity to our people, and we refuse as a city to hold back, because our dream was a pro-poor government that will ensure that we put at the center of the things we do the plight of our people. So these are the things that we're continuously working on.
Housing, yesterday I was in KwaZulu-Natal, where I just want to give an illustration, where I went to visit a home of an old lady. This old lady is now has received a home that we had built. But suddenly, because of that home, she's able to bake and sell. She didn't have that before. So poverty, houses has many dimensions. So basically, once a person has a house, all of a sudden they're able to have electricity, water. They can now see and they can have a sense of hope for the future and start to be stabilized and do something. So for us, that's the most important impact that you can do through shelter.
As part of the day's activities, 2 buses took attendees on a road trip to the construction site at Palm Ridge. The Mandela Day initiative has enjoyed global solidarity and support as a day of action on Madiba's birthday. In order to continue changing the lives of millions of people for the better, the Nelson Mandela Foundation has reviewed the initiative and resolved to mark the 10th anniversary with a shift in approach and strategy. The new strategy is called Mandela Day, the Next Chapter, and will focus on harnessing research, analysis and dialogue to inform a global database of needs for global partnerships to focus on. Shelter is one of the 5 key focus areas identified by the Nelson Mandela Foundation around Nelson Mandela Day for the next 10 years. The others are education and literacy, food and nutrition, sanitation, and active citizenship.
At the top of these 5 areas, from shelter, education, early childhood development, and food security, and of course at the top of it is the issue of having active citizens. You know, I can't emphasize enough, Godfrey, that for us, you need to always just go back to ensuring that active citizens go out and say, this is an area I can help with. Madiba said, if I were to quote him, he said that each one of us every morning when we wake up, we need to then ask ourselves, what am I doing to help build a country of my dreams? It's about dreaming big. It's about taking responsibility for that country. And then the next 10 years will be about growing it exponentially. That we should be talking about less figures, if no figures at all, in the next 10 years of food insecurity, of people who don't have shelter. And it's it's the dream that we have for the year ahead, but not just dreaming, that we work for that dream.
It's not just the work of the foundation alone, isn't it, in terms of educating the community about the importance of the facilities that are provided for it. It is also the work of politicians such as yourselves in trying to make the citizenry understand that while their frustrations are understood, destroying a school in order to get a school is getting us nowhere.
Yes, at all times we must discourage the disruption of public property, because it becomes a setback for that community. As government, we've got competing needs of different communities. So at all times, as we do long-term planning, we take into consideration that certain services has to be provided. And I think MEC Maile was speaking here that if you want to build a human settlement, there are a lot of consideration beyond just providing a house. You must make sure that there is a school, there is a clinic, there is a park. All those things, as and when they are delivered, a community must be sensitive that the next community next to them is also expecting to receive similar services. And we receive, these are public monies that get to be burned down. And when we are held to account, it becomes difficult to account when a school has been touched in Katlehong, whereas people could have just marched and give their memorandum and express their demand.
Is it the failure of the politics, and is it also a failure of the politicians that we are ending up in this situation?
Well, there is a new phenomenon that is creeping up of just public disorder that is creeping up, which we must speak very firmly against, because we need to create a society where all of us can respect the rule of law as a starting point. But secondly, we must respect the public infrastructure that is out there to assist us, because if you touch a clinic that is built, what do you do when you arrive at home? Your mother or your wife is sick and you're supposed to be taking him to that facility. But also beyond that, we really have to make sure that we build a culture of tolerance amongst our communities. There is many ways in which people can protest without burning public infrastructure, because it becomes a setback for the community, because now if you have to spend an additional 80 million to build a school that has been there, when are you going to put a road, put electricity? Because we come from a past that has actually had limited public resources, especially for townships. So it's important, therefore, that we preserve whatever a public facility that gets to be built by government, and we must protect such facilities.
SALGA, the South African Local Government Association, signed an MOU with the Nelson Mandela Foundation in 2017. This outlines a partnership between the foundation and all SALGA municipalities to live out the values Nelson Mandela stood for.
For developing programs around maintaining human dignity, we are here supporting the Mayor of Ekurhuleni in the building of the houses that he has built, as well as ensuring that we respect, give dignity again to people that are supporting the vulnerable, supporting communities that are not able to stand up for themselves. We partnered with one of our municipalities last year in identifying when Tata turned 100, was supposed to turn 100 years, identifying all the 100-year-olds, and we celebrated them and ensured that they become comfortable in those years, So those are some of the programs that we are taking through, and as now, that we are celebrating 10 years of the celebrating Madiba's Day. We're hoping that with the MOU going into another 10 years, we will be able to develop programs that are going to ensure that the dignity of people is restored. We fight with them poverty. We will fight in ensuring that the vulnerable people are protected. So that's what we hope to get out of the MOU. It does change people's lives because then we take it through to the 365 days. We just don't focus on July the 18th only. So we're seeing that where houses have been built, people are happy they're given their houses. Where sanitation needs to be addressed, we go there with the foundation and other stakeholders that would have been identified, sorting out the sanitation issues, ensuring that the vulnerable are protected, partnering with homes and NGOs that are taking care of people that are vulnerable, people that are not able to stand up for themselves. So that it does have a beautiful impact in that people feel that their dignity is restored, they are protected. So for us, and something that we want to see all our 200 plus municipalities taking, so that tomorrow people can be happy in saying that local government has managed to change their lives. So that's what we will do. And as 10 years come in, we would want to partner with countries in the continent and cities in the continent in taking on some of what Mandela believed in, and entrenching it deeper into our continent so that we change Africa, not just change South Africa.
Our approach to the development is not just looking at Gauteng, but looking at making sure that the whole country succeeds. Because if you are able to solve problems in all the provinces, then you are, in a way, dealing with the Gauteng problem, dealing with the Western Cape problem. Because people will not have to come to Gauteng, will not have to go to the big cities looking for work.
Urban migration is a huge issue. Moving from place to place is a big issue, and it's not just about to end. It's a worldwide phenomenon. There are issues at a political level in those countries or in those areas where people are moving from, like rural areas, that need to be addressed. But we're here now with a problem. So what needs to be done now? The government has to do its work well, better. But also we as a civil society, we as private sector has to come in to support that. But also what's key, and which is very important, is that the people themselves need to be educated, not to depend on others. And that's what Habitat does. For people to seek inventive ways in which they themselves can improve their lives. And so for us, the solution lies at a number of levels. We have to deal with the immediate problem that you have now, but you also have to have policy instruments to deal with the broader issues that can come from economy, politics, and migration, whatever it is, so that you can address the issue that's taking place.
But also, we have come to a realization that we will not be able to give everyone a house. And that's why we've got what we call a rapid land release program. We said in the next 5 years we will release a minimum of 100,000 stands, at least as the provincial government. That excludes the work that municipalities can do. We also work with municipalities and the national government, and as you know, there are different efforts by these spheres of government as well. And we are also continuing to build and to also look at informal settlements, as you correctly put them. These informal settlements have grown so fast, and that is because of amongst other things, illegal land invasion, which is an issue we will deal with as well at some point. But we also want to make sure that the informal settlements that are on habitable land are formalized at least. We put water, we put electricity, and there's those that are not on habitable land. We would have to then find alternative land for them. So it's not going to be an easy task, as you can imagine, because if you look at the number of informal settlements since I think if you say in 2005 or so, there were around 400 and something, and around Gauteng, and I think we're sitting at just above 600 or 700 now. That's big. So, as I've said, the task is daunting.
A lot of work has been done to date. We have over 300 billion worth of investment pipelines that we have attracted, and I'm sure if you travel around the R21 now, you'll see that there are a lot of developments. A lot of factories are coming up as a result of that decision that we have made, and I'm happy that firstly we are going to stimulate our economy, but secondly create jobs for the most vulnerable of our people here in Ekurhuleni. And I think that it's been good that the government could project the future of the city 30 years to come, and I think that we are beginning to see a lot of factories now coming up, and which basically are focusing on freight and logistics using the advantage of the international airport.
Education and literacy is one of the 5 pillars identified for development over the next 10 years. The first goal is to provide quality education for all children. The second goal is for all children in early childhood development centres to have access to learning resources and development.
To break the back of poverty and inequality, we have to start it with the young ones, so that they don't have to rely on a draw of the lottery. Where were you born? Who are your parents? The color of your skin still matters today, not only your character. And I think if we are to do anything is to change that. The education, we need to change education.
We dream of a university here in the area of Ekurhuleni, and we've been pursuing this dream since we started in 2016. We have now completed the feasibility study and the business plan. We have written to the minister, who must, through the Act of Parliament, now make a final determination whether or not this community will have can have its own university. And we have been continuously making sure that we make education fashionable. We are the only city in South Africa that has put aside about 100 million rand to educate a poor child from this particular area. So these are the initiatives which form a dream that we pulled together as the African National Congress here in Ekurhuleni.
For us on education, we've been really trying to drill it in. I went with the MEC of Education here in Gauteng, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, to Europe recently. And the enthusiasm of people around the world who want to see us succeed as a continent, especially on education. People are putting up their hands and saying, we want to help. Tell us where you need the help. And I think it shouldn't just be us always going to ask for help. We must also help ourselves sometimes and say we can improve these systems ourselves, so that they then, and the foundation has been helping bring about quality education, that we ensure that each one of us has a role, plays a role in the future we want. And of course, food security. You are aware of the report that was released a couple of days ago, which indicates that just under 60% of people around the world are suffering from food insecurity. And I think we need to be doing more about these areas, and we are grateful for the partners who keep joining on, because governments can do it alone, civil society can do it alone. All of us must join in.
Because you see, the government is doing something, is doing as much as they can under the limited resources that they may have. But what we are saying is that the reconstruction of our country and the reconstruction or the destruction of poverty has to be a partnership by everybody involved, including the private sector. Because it is the very same people that the private sector relies on who are poor, to work for them. So we're saying that is a very, very key partnership arrangement.
Civil society is composed of different formations. There may be political, religious, you've got NGOs, etc., etc. And some of those different organizations are already doing a lot of work to support the work that we're doing, but to also have their own initiatives. The same goes for private sector. You will know that in Gauteng we've got what we call the mega human settlements. We've taken up an approach of working with the private sector to stop building a few houses, but to build massive houses, 10,000 and above. And in most cases, the private sector will come and it becomes a kind of a mixed development, for instance. So already there's a practical way in how we work with the private sector. There's a practical way in how we work with communities.
It's amazing how the corporates are open. Now I can take you right now to site in Palm Ridge where we're building. We've got over 30 corporates that are out there from different companies. Some companies are bringing in teams almost every day. I was in KZN yesterday. There were 10 there. The day before, I was in Cape Town. There's another 10 there. So what I'm saying is that there's willingness. There's willingness. It just needs to be cultivated and enhanced.
Sometimes we rely so much on the big man syndrome. In this country of ours, we had a big man in the form of Nelson Mandela. When after 5 years we believed that he didn't achieve everything we were dreaming that he could have had, we then lambasted him. Today we have another big man who has come in the form of Cyril Ramaphosa. And we're saying, when I spoke to the president recently, I said, I hope that you don't fall in that trap, that South Africans give you this burden of being the big man. And at the end of your term, you look back and you say, yes, I managed to do the following, but I couldn't achieve it all. Because all of us fold our arms and we want someone to do it. We want someone else to give us direction. Give direction yourself. Let entrepreneurs give us ideas, be innovative. We lack no imagination on this continent. And if our continent is to do anything, is to ensure that all 52 countries always then say, what are we doing to ensure that when Madiba in 1962, when he was traveling through the continent asking for support for the apartheid government, each one of them participated. Not just governments, like in Nigeria, for example, Nigerians contributed in their taxes, and I think we are innovative people. Surely we can break the back of these things, but we can't fold our arms. We must go out, get busy.
Many times we look at the government, we look at the private sector, we look at institutions as the ones who have to take initiative to transform our lives and to transform the lives of our communities. I think the Mandela Day is a reminder that any one of us has the power to take initiative, has the power to drive transformation. Madiba taught us something very important, even when he was a head of state and particularly when he stepped down. That's when he went across the country trying to identify villages and where there was no school, where there was no clinic, where there was no water, and on a personal commitment to make sure that he takes those services in collaboration with private sector, of course, but to care about people and use your power perhaps to bring the partnerships which can do something concrete. I think it's important for us to take that responsibility individually, not only to rely on institutions. This is number one. Number two, I wanted to encourage us not to look at the Mandela Day as an event, which we are going to be part of every year. But perhaps some of us could begin thinking of between 2019 and 2020. What is it which I pledge personally to do, and I will keep doing for the whole year, which goes beyond my daily activities, where I work or where I'm employed or even if I am an entrepreneur, just to decide what is the difference I can make to other people along the year so that it will become, as the Selo was saying, a way of being, a way of living, and it's not an event. I wasn't prepared to speak, but I was caught on spot and I had to say something. Thank you so much. And we are proud of Ekurhuleni, of the lots of initiatives which are going on here in this city. And we encourage you to continue to make sure that the dream is exactly not only the numbers, but to say every citizen living in this place have a dignified life. That is the biggest dream. And perhaps we can have in you an example of what is going to be the next 10 years.
I want to remind the viewers of CNBC that when we started this, it was in 2 cities. We started this in New York and in Johannesburg, with a little less than 1,000 people who participated in both initiatives. Today we're talking about 145 countries which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about countries which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating in both initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating 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 initiatives. Today we're talking about which are participating